You know, you hear the speeches,
Yep.
or you read the headlines.
You go constantly, every election cycle.
Exactly. Every single cycle. And the narrative is always, it's always the same. Startups are the engine of our economy.
New businesses create all the jobs. Yeah.
Right. And politicians, I mean, they just love saying this. Wall Street builds entire financial models around it.
Because it sounds good.
It does. It feels right. Like this whole idea of the scrappy entrepreneur in a garage, hiring the whole neighborhood, it's just baked into our culture.
That's the ultimate success story.
But, and this is why we are doing this deep dive today, what if that prosperity is like a total lie?
Yeah.
What if this massive economic boom you're seeing on the news is actually just, well, what if it's a glitch in a database?
A really, really big glitch.
Right. And we are not talking about a minor rounding error here.
No, not at all. We are talking about a foundational error, a systemic flaw in how modern nations actually understand their own economies.
It's wild.
In macroeconomic policy, startups are basically worshipped. They're magic. But the data we're diving into today proves something genuinely, it's jarring.
Totally jarring. Face-slapping, real.
Exactly. Up to 50% of the job growth attributed to new businesses is a statistical hallucination.
50%.
50%. It simply does not exist.
Okay, let's unpack this, because making a claim like that requires some extremely heavy evidence.
Oh, the evidence is overwhelming.
Which brings us to the core of our deep dive. So we're looking at this blockbuster investigation, 30 years of administrative data.
30 years, yeah.
Led by Johannes Schmieder at Boston University, along with this massive research team. And they didn't just, run a quick survey.
Right, this wasn't a poll.
No, they tracked millions of workers over decades, specifically looking inside the German economy. And what they found just completely dismantles what we thought we knew.
It really deconstructs the myth piece by piece. And the mechanism behind this whole illusion, it's almost comically boring.
Right. You'd think a lie this big involves some crazy conspiracy.
Yeah, like complex financial engineering or something. But no, it all comes down to one tiny administrative detail.
The enterprise identification number.
The ID, yes.
So let's camp out here for a second, because to understand this hallucination, you really have to understand the machine that's generating it.
You have to look at the plumbing.
Right, the plumbing. So governments track businesses. Obviously, they have to collect taxes, they monitor employment laws, all that.
They need to know who is operating inside their borders.
Exactly. So they assign this ID number, the EID, to every single registered company.
Right. Think of it like a fingerprint for a corporation.
Yeah.
Every time a business hires someone or pays a tax or files a report, that ID number is the anchor.
It's the core metric.
Exactly. It's the core metric for all national economic data. If the government wants to know how many businesses exist, they literally just count the active IDs.
Makes sense.
And if they want to know how many startups were born this year,
They just count the brand new IDs.
exactly.
Okay, on paper, that sounds, perfectly rational.
Sure. In a vacuum, it's fine.
But reality is super messy. Like, businesses aren't carved in stone. They're living legal things. They evolve all the time.
Constantly.
A founder might sell the company, or a partnership decides to incorporate, or a huge conglomerate merges two internal departments.
Totally normal corporate stuff.
Right, everyday maneuvers. But when that happens, the bureaucracy has this incredibly rigid response.
That's a fatal flaw.
The old ID number is permanently deleted, and a brand new ID is generated for the new legal status.
Yep. And the computer system processing this, it's completely blind.
It has no real-world context.
None. It doesn't have eyes. It just sees a stream of digits. So when an old ID disappears, the system's logic dictates only one possible conclusion.
Which is?
That company died, it went bankrupt. It vanished.
Oh, wow.
And when a new ID appears a millisecond later, the system logs it as a brand new, totally original company being born.
Wait, so it's like, okay, imagine I have a used car, and I go down to the DMV to change my license plate.
Okay.
The government doesn't register that my old car just exploded on the highway, and then a miraculously identical new car was manufactured right in my driveway.
Right. That would be absurd.
That's completely absurd. They know it's the same vehicle.
But the business database doesn't.
How on earth does a government look at a massive factory that hasn't moved an inch, hasn't fired a single worker, and declare it a startup just because a lawyer filed some paperwork?
Because tracking physical factories is really hard.
Yeah.
Tracking numbers is incredibly easy.
Lazy, basically.
Statistical agencies rely heavily on these administrative databases because, well, they're cheap, and they cover the whole population.
But your DMV analogy is spot on.
Right. And relying on these raw, uncorrected ID numbers distorts the data so badly.
How badly?
The researchers found it exaggerates the job creation of startups and the job destruction of failing companies by a staggering 100%.
100%. Wait, so we are literally doubling reality.
We are doubling it. We are doubling the volatility of the entire system.
That is insane.
If you look at the raw data, it paints this picture of extreme, almost violent churn.
Right. It looks like massive numbers of businesses are opening and closing every single day.
Creating tens of thousands of jobs, then destroying them a year later.
Well, what's the actual reality?
The reality is just a quiet room full of accountants.
Changing names on a spreadsheet?
Exactly. Changing tax brackets, the concrete buildings are the same, the workers are sitting at the exact same desks, drinking the exact same coffee.
Okay, so that means all those political speeches, right? All those tax incentives for job creators.
Yep.
The local news cheering for a startup boom. It might all be built on a totally fake foundation.
Completely twisted.
But if the official IDs are actively lying to us, how do you catch the lie? Like, how did this research team figure out what was real?
They realized they had to completely stop looking at the companies.
Just ignore the IDs entirely.
Yeah, the IDs are compromised. To find the truth, you have to look past the corporate shell. You have to track the humans.
You track the flowing employees.
Precisely. But, to do that at a national scale, that requires an unimaginable amount of data.
Because you're tracking everyone.
Right. So Schmieder's team used the German Establishment History Panel, the BHP.
And this isn't some small survey.
No, this is a mammoth undertaking.
Yeah.
It covers from 1975 all the way to 2004.
Wow.
It tracks roughly 80% of the entire German workforce. We are talking about 2 million businesses and 25 million individual jobs.
25 million.
Logged every single year for nearly 3 decades.
I just want to pause on that scale for a second. That is 25 million jobs, year after year. They essentially built a microscopic time-lapse record of the entire working class.
Yes. And that granular human-level data is the only way to expose the illusion.
Because it lets you see inside the shell.
Exactly. They developed a method to look inside these supposedly new companies. They ignored the new ID number and looked directly at the payroll.
Right. Where did these people actually come from?
Exactly. If the system flags a brand new startup, but the researchers see that, say, 90% of the workforce was sitting next to each other at a different company last December.
Then it's obviously not a startup.
Right. It's an old company wearing a new jacket.
Yeah, I mean, sure, startups don't just materialize out of thin air with a fully formed team.
No, they build slowly.
If I start a tech company, I'm going to hire, one developer right out of college, a marketing person who is unemployed, and maybe I poach a salesperson.
You're pulling from diverse sources.
Exactly. The team converges from all these different corners of the economy.
And that is the exact fingerprint of real entrepreneurial activity.
Right.
But a fake startup, it pulls its entire ecosystem from a single point of origin.
Just one giant migration.
Right. So to quantify this, they created a metric, the maximum clustered inflow, the MCI.
Okay, let's avoid the academic jargon. Let's just call it the coworker migration tracker.
I like that. The coworker migration tracker. It calculates the largest single group of workers moving from one specific old company into a new one.
It isolates those clusters.
Exactly. If the cluster is too dense, if a massive chunk of your new workforce shares the exact same previous employer, the algorithm flashes red.
It flags it as a fake.
Right. It's basically a statistical lie detector.
Okay, so what happens when we run the entire history of the German economy through this lie detector?
Oh, the landscape transforms completely.
Squeeze the water out. What do we see?
Well, to be fair to the raw data, there is a paradox we have to acknowledge.
Okay.
When you look strictly at the number of new IDs generated, about 95% of them actually are real tiny businesses.
Wait, 95%?
Yes, like a 3-person bakery. Or an independent mechanic renting a new garage.
Okay, so they file for a new ID, and they are genuinely new.
Yes, but here's the massive catch. While those tiny bakeries make up the vast majority of the number of new businesses,
Right.
when you look at the total number of new jobs created, those real startups only account for 50%.
Hold on, I need to make sure I'm getting this. 95% of the businesses are real, but they only create 50% of the jobs.
Exact.
So who is claiming to create the other half?
The ghosts.
The ghosts.
Yes. What's fascinating here is the illusion of scale. Those real tiny bakeries, they only hire 2 or 3 people.
They're a drop in the ocean.
A total drop. The illusion lives entirely in the big numbers. The raw system was showing massive new businesses popping up and supposedly creating thousands of jobs overnight.
But a huge corporation doesn't just spawn into existence with 3,000 employees on day one.
Exactly. What actually happens is a multinational firm changes its holding structure for, tax purposes.
Oh, I see.
3,000 long-term employees get shifted to a newly generated ID number.
And the automated system just screams, economic miracle.
Right. A new startup just created 3,000 jobs, but it didn't create a single position.
It literally just changed the letterhead on 3,000 existing paychecks.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
That is maddening. And from what I understand, this hallucination cuts both ways. It's not just the births that are fake.
No.
The deaths are totally fake, too.
Right. And this is where the real-world emotional impact hits. Because when a large company supposedly dies, when its ID vanishes from the registry, society panics.
Oh, yeah, it leads the evening news.
Local politicians rush to the microphones. They offer stimulus packages. Everyone assumes a factory just shuttered and thousands of families are out on the street.
Manufacturing plant closes, 500 jobs lost. It creates real dread.
But the researchers look specifically at the deaths of large companies, those with over 100 employees. The public assumes an ID vanishing means bankruptcy, but the data shows that less than a quarter of those large company deaths are actual physical closures.
Less than 25%.
Less than 25%.
So what happened to the other 75%?
Mergers, acquisitions, internal divisions spinning off. The ID number died, the company did not.
The physical reality was completely intact.
The buildings are still standing, the assembly lines are running, the workers clock in at 8 a.m., just like always.
The only thing that vanished was a string of digits in a server room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet because of that missing number, politicians are agonizing over phantom bankruptcies, drafting legislation to heal economic wounds that never actually occurred.
Okay, I have to stop and challenge this for a second, because the implications are just too huge.
Sure.
If I'm listening to this, I might be thinking, okay, this coworker migration tracker sounds clever, but tracking worker movement is still just an algorithm, right?
It is an algorithm, yes.
What if the algorithm is flawed? Like, let's say I buy an old, failing bakery.
Okay.
I fire the terrible management, but I keep half the bakers who actually know the recipes. Then I bring in a totally new marketing team to revamp the brand.
Turnaround.
Right. I poured my life savings into this. It's a massive risk. I consider myself a real startup. But because I kept a cluster of the old bakers, your algorithm might flag me as a fake ghost company.
Right.
Why should the system punish me for keeping some old workers?
That is a brilliant pushback. And honestly, it's exactly the kind of skepticism the researchers themselves had.
Because they knew they were making a crazy claim.
Right. They were walking into government offices claiming half their flagship data was garbage. You can't make a claim that aggressive without bulletproof validation.
So how did they prove the algorithm wasn't just hallucinating its own numbers?
They cross-examined the ghosts.
How?
They took the algorithm's findings and checked them against a completely independent data set, a direct survey of 15,000 actual businesses.
An actual survey, like talking to the humans running the business.
Yes, the establishment panel. They went directly to the owners and asked plain, unambiguous questions. What year did you actually build this factory? When did you officially open your doors?
Ground truth.
Exactly. Raw, unvarnished truth straight from the source.
Okay, so on one hand, you have the survey data, the truth. On the other hand, the official government database riddled with ID swaps.
Yep.
And then the researchers' new migration tracker trying to spot the fakes. What happened when they smashed all three together?
The results were definitive. Absolute validation.
Really?
When the researchers' algorithm flagged a company as a fake ID change, meaning it was just an old company in disguise, they checked the government birth year against the survey.
Yeah.
Zero correlation. The year the government ID claimed the company was born had absolutely nothing to do with the year the owner said they built the factory.
Wow. Didn't the study say it was sometimes even a negative correlation?
Yes.
Ew.
In some cohorts, it was inversely related to reality.
That's hilarious.
But when the algorithm pierced through that fog and declared, this one is a real startup, the survey confirmed it perfectly.
So the algorithm successfully separated the living companies from the dead paperwork.
Flawlessly.
And once they separated the real from the fake, they started noticing how these two different groups behaved in the real world, right?
Yes, if you strip away the paperwork, real businesses act incredibly differently from administrative ghosts.
How so?
They behave like living organisms, reacting to their environment. The researchers mapped both groups against the macroeconomic business cycle, the booms and the recessions.
Right. So when the economy is booming, optimism is high. Interest rates are good, consumers are spending, venture capital is flowing.
Exactly.
During those periods, you'd expect real startup creation to spike. People quit their stable corporate jobs to chase a dream because there's a safety net.
And that is exactly what the corrected data shows. Real business births ride the roller coaster. They spike dramatically during boom years.
And during a recession.
When funding dries up and fear sets in, true startup creation plummets. Real businesses breathe with the economy.
But the fake ones, the ones flagged by the tracker?
They flatline.
Wait, they don't react at all.
Absolute apathy. Boom or bust, soaring GDP or crushing recession. The rate of these fake ID creations just lies there, completely flat.
Why wouldn't a recession slow down fake companies?
Because a corporate lawyer filing a restructuring document on the 40th floor of a bank tower doesn't care about the broader economic climate.
Oh, right.
The tax-related need to merge two holding companies is a technical maneuver. It is totally disconnected from the economic heartbeat.
It's basically just administrative housekeeping.
Exactly. The fact that these data points do not react to a massive global recession is the ultimate proof they aren't measuring the real economy.
It's like checking the pulse on a mannequin.
Perfect analogy.
But spotting a flat line during a recession is a very macro view. How else can you tell a real startup from a fake one if you just look at one single company over time?
You look at their life trajectory.
Yeah.
And the absolute simplest differentiator is growth.
Growth.
Real startups are hungry. They have to fight to survive. Let's look at the smallest ones. A true organic startup usually begins with an average of one employee, right? Working out of a garage, doing sales, marketing, product development, all by themselves.
But if they survive,
they multiply. The data shows these real startups grow from one employee to an average of 4.4 employees within a few years.
They hire, they expand.
They add actual net new jobs to the economy.
Okay. And what about the life trajectory of the fake startups, the ones born from a paperwork change?
Zero growth.
None at all.
It is a completely flat, dead horizontal line in the years following their supposed birth.
Mm-hmm.
Their employee count does not change by a single person.
Well, of course it doesn't. They aren't trying to conquer a new market. They already have all the employees they need because they just absorbed a pre-existing factory.
Exactly.
If you start with 100 employees on Monday, change your tax ID on Tuesday, you still have 100 employees on Wednesday. You're just maintaining the status quo under a new alias.
The growth curves diverge instantly and permanently. Real startups shoot upward. Fakes stay horizontal.
But let's go back to my earlier pushback, the bakery example.
The turnaround, yeah.
Right. Where do we draw the line? Because employee movement isn't black and white. People change jobs constantly.
It's a huge gray area.
Right. An executive leaves a big tech firm, takes 3 of her best engineers with her, and starts a new venture. That happens every day in Silicon Valley. It's a real company, but it has a cluster of coworkers.
This was the most sensitive and difficult part of the algorithm to tune. They had to draw a mathematical line in the sand.
At what percentage does a group of coworkers moving together cease to be, like, a coincidence or team poaching?
And cross over into becoming a fake company transplant.
Exactly. Finding the boundary between reality and hallucination.
They ran exhaustive tests. They didn't just guess a number. They tested every possible threshold. What if we draw the line at 10%? What if we draw it at 15%?
And they checked each threshold against the business cycle?
Yes. And against the 15,000 firm survey to verify the truth.
So where did the math finally settle? What was the golden ratio?
30%.
30%.
That is the statistical edge of the cliff.
Explain how that 30% rule works in practice.
It means that if the largest single group of employees flowing from one old company into your new company makes up less than 30% of your total new staff,
then the algorithm recognizes you as a real startup.
Yes.
Okay, so if I launch a new logistics company and 29% of my new hires are folks I used to work with at FedEx.
You're legitimate.
Because to get the other 71%, I had to go out into the open market.
Exactly. You hired from unemployment, poached from other industries, brought in fresh grads. You synthesized a completely new team.
That takes real entrepreneurial effort.
But the moment you cross that 30% threshold,
It breaks down.
completely breaks down. If 40 or 60 or 80% of your new staff all just walked across the street from the exact same old employer, you are not building a new team.
You're a fake.
You simply transplanted an existing corporate organ into a new legal body. Beyond that 30% mark, these startups stop reacting to the business cycle. They stop growing.
They become the ghosts.
Exactly.
That one metric, 30%, is the key to unlocking the actual truth of an economy. And this is where we have to fundamentally rewrite economic history.
We really do.
Because when you apply that golden ratio, the celebrated startup miracle starts to look incredibly thin.
The corrected numbers are profoundly humbling for anyone in macroeconomic policy.
Because before this correction, the official narrative, the one driving tax policy and campaigns, was that new businesses were responsible for what? Roughly 25% of all job creation?
Right. A quarter of the entire economy's growth, supposedly resting on these brand new entities.
And after the correction,
A total illusion. Once the researchers applied the 30% threshold, squeezed the fake data out.
remove the ID swaps.
Exactly. That contribution plummeted from 25% down to just 13%.
The miracle was cut exactly in half.
Cut in half.
I mean, 13% is still vital. It's a chunk of the economy. But it is certainly not the invincible silver bullet politicians claim it is.
It's half as powerful as we were led to believe.
And the dark side of the data, the job losses, that was heavily exaggerated too, wasn't it?
Yes, the bleeding was largely fake as well.
The phantom deaths.
Exactly. When you correct the data for job destruction, the jobs supposedly permanently lost when companies die, that number drops by 11%.
So when the media reports on a tragic wave of corporate bankruptcies,
A huge portion of that bloodbath is just a corporate wardrobe change. The true job destruction is 11% lower than the official panic suggests.
the economy is actually much more stable than the raw data portrays.
Much less volatile.
Which brings us to a really dangerous metric, net jobs.
Oh, this is the big one.
This is the ultimate scorecard for any government. Total jobs created minus total jobs lost. Why is this specific error so catastrophic when policymakers look at net job growth?
Because net job growth is often a very small, marginal number.
Like hovering around zero.
Right. Think about a year where the economy is relatively flat, neither booming nor crashing. The margins are incredibly thin. In those specific, delicate years, relying on uncorrected statistics causes the data to go completely wild.
How wild are we talking? What's the error margin?
In those critical years, the uncorrected data can deviate from reality by negative 60% to positive 30%.
A 60% error margin on the net employment growth of an entire nation.
Yes.
That is beyond a glitch. That is total blindness.
It's worse than flying blind because you think you have instruments guiding you.
Right.
You have central bankers sitting in boardrooms trying to steer a massive economy. They are looking at a dashboard that is screaming that employment is crashing or wildly booming.
But the dashboard is broken.
The needles are spinning out of control just because a massive wave of corporate lawyers decided to change tax IDs that year.
And the policy implications of a broken dashboard are terrifying. Central banks look at a fake boom, panic about inflation, and raise interest rates.
Which could trigger a real recession.
To cool off a boom that was just a spike in paperwork.
Exactly. Or, conversely, they see a fake crash, panic, and print billions of dollars to stimulate an economy that was actually perfectly fine.
Just undergoing a wave of mergers.
You're starting to see the true cost of this illusion. It's not just an academic debate about spreadsheets. It dictates global finance.
I want to make this explicitly clear and personal for everyone listening to this right now.
Good idea.
You might be wondering, why should you care about a German database error from the 90s? Why does this historical deep dive matter to your life today?
Because your government right now makes massive decisions based on this exact flawed logic.
It directly impacts public resources. Governments everywhere love handing out taxpayer subsidies to new businesses.
They create massive grant programs.
Sprawling tax breaks to stimulate job growth. They want to reward the heroic job creators. But because they don't track the underlying worker flows,
Because they only track the superficial IDs.
your tax money is being funneled to the exact wrong people.
It is a colossal waste of public funds. Your tax dollars, intended to help a struggling entrepreneur launch a new idea, are instead going to old, wealthy, established corporations.
Who just filed some paperwork.
Right. They change their legal name, check the box, claim the startup subsidy, and pocket the cash.
They didn't create a single new job.
No new product.
They just successfully gamed a blind system. You, the taxpayer, are subsidizing a legal fiction. You are literally paying for ghosts.
It's true. If policymakers don't adopt this worker flow tracking method, they are throwing public money into a bureaucratic black hole.
But, if we step back from the policy failures for a moment, the data reveals anything else, doesn't it?
It does. It doesn't just show us dry numbers. It shows us human psychology.
How people behave under pressure. Let's talk about corporate spin-offs. This was a fascinating part of the research.
Yeah.
A spin-off is when a large mother company breaks a piece of itself off to form a brand new independent company.
Right. And by tracking the workers, the researchers were able to divide these spin-offs into two very distinct psychological categories.
Pushed and pulled.
Pushed and pulled.
What's the fundamental difference?
It entirely depends on the macroeconomic climate. Let's look at push spin-offs first.
Okay.
These happen during recessions. The large mother company is panicking. Revenues are down. They're bleeding cash. They need to cut costs to survive.
So they take an entire department?
They push it out the door, force it to incorporate as its own independent entity, and essentially tell it to survive on its own.
Wow. It's an act of sheer desperation, severing a limb to save the body.
Exactly. Pushing people off a sinking ship and telling them to build their own lifeboat.
And the data reflects this.
Perfectly. These push spin-offs show a massive, dramatic spike during economic downturns. They are deeply anti-cyclical.
But a pulled spin-off, the psychology completely flipped.
Completely flips. Pulled spin-offs happen during the booms.
Right. During an expansion, companies are flush with cash.
Leadership sees a new, lucrative market opportunity outside their core business.
So they pull a specialized team together, spin them off, and fund them to capture that market.
It's an act of aggressive expansion, not desperate survival.
The data isn't just counting widgets. It's capturing the fear and greed of human economics perfectly.
It really is.
But it captures more than just business cycles, right? The researchers found the data also captured deep historical trauma. Let's talk about the ghosts of East and West Germany.
This is perhaps the most profound part of the entire 30-year study.
Because they tracked this data right through the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yes, the most tumultuous period in modern European history, the reunification of Germany in the early 90s.
And you can literally see the shockwaves of history vibrating through the statistical errors.
You really can.
Set the stage for us. What did the data look like in West Germany during this time?
Well, West Germany was a mature, highly developed capitalist economy. But as it moved into the 90s, it grew increasingly complex.
Heavily financialized.
Globalized. And what the data shows in the West is a massive, continuous, creeping surge in fake ID restructurings.
The bureaucracy was metastasizing.
The legal structures were getting more complicated, so the statistical ghosts were multiplying year after year.
The Western economy was basically playing a sophisticated shell game with itself, generating endless paperwork without creating real physical value.
Exactly.
But what was happening on the other side of the former wall? What did East Germany look like in the data?
East Germany was an entirely different universe. They were undergoing a brutal, rapid transition.
From a rigid communist system to a free market capitalist economy.
Pure structural chaos. Massive state-owned monopolies were being shattered overnight.
Entire industrial sectors were being privatized, broken into pieces, sold off.
It wasn't just paper moving around. It was real, violent, physical change to the infrastructure of a society.
And the data captures this explosion.
Perfectly. There is a huge chaotic spike in restructurings, spin-offs, and new IDs in the East during the early 90s.
But unlike the West, this wasn't a slow creep of financialization.
No, it was the frantic, desperate reorganization of an entire nation trying to adapt to a new reality.
But the spike didn't last forever, did it?
No, and that is the beauty of the worker flow data. As the East German economy finally adapted to capitalism, as the dust settled,
The data normalized.
the massive spike dropped down. Over the following years, their restructuring patterns slowly blended into the rhythm of the West.
The data essentially holds the scars of a nation's painful transition.
It's incredible to look at.
You can literally read the collapse of the Soviet bloc and the birth of a unified capitalist nation in a chart of algorithmic worker flows.
It's history in numbers.
But But what I love most about this deep dive is that it doesn't end with a depressing realization about how broken the system is.
Right.
This study didn't just document history, it actually made history.
It truly did. This is not one of those academic papers that gets published, cited by a few peers, and then sits on a dusty shelf forever.
It sparked a quiet, invisible revolution in global statistics. Johannes Schmieder and his team didn't just point out the massive glitch and walk away.
No, they fixed it.
They took unprecedented action.
They partnered directly with the German government. They went to the research data center of the IAB.
The Institute for Employment Research.
Exactly. They took their 6 ghost hunting worker flow variables, including that vital 30% golden ratio.
And they embedded them directly into the official German administrative database.
They hot-wired the government's mainframe, to tell the truth.
They permanently altered the lens through which a major economic power views itself.
And the impact didn't stop at the German border.
Statistical agencies all over the globe read this paper.
They looked at that terrifying 100% error rate. They looked at their own raw ID-based systems, and they had a collective realization.
Our databases are just as flawed. We are hallucinating too.
So now, countries all over the world are actively copying and implementing this method.
It's a global revolution in data quality.
They're realizing that you cannot rely on bureaucratic labels. You have to track the humans. You have to follow the actual workers to understand the actual economy.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. We've unpacked the fatal flaw. We've seen how tracking workers exposes the ghosts. We've watched the startup miracle shrink by half.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for us?
It means we must cultivate a deep, persistent skepticism of official narratives, especially when they are tied to massive financial incentives.
We believe that startups were the ultimate invincible job engine.
We built massive political campaigns around that belief.
Restructured tax codes to worship the new business owner. But it turns out we were largely being fooled by administrative ID swaps and legal restructurings.
By tracking the people rather than the paperwork, we cut the grand illusion in half.
Swept away the ghosts, and underneath all that noise, we found the real beating heartbeat of the economy. It might be smaller than we thought, but at least it is real.
Knowledge is only truly valuable when it forces us to update a broken worldview. This entire study is a masterclass in critical thinking.
It's definitive proof that raw data, no matter how massive the sample size, no matter how official the government seal on the report, is utterly meaningless without the correct human context.
Completely meaningless.
I want to leave you with a final, somewhat chilling thought to mull over. Germany is globally famous for being meticulous.
Oh, absolutely. Culturally renowned for being rigid, highly structured, strictly organized.
Their engineering and record-keeping are considered world-class, and yet their official economic databases, the very foundation of their macroeconomic policy, had a 100% error margin for decades.
They were literally living a double life in their statistics, and nobody noticed until someone bothered to check where the workers were actually sitting.
It forces you to look at your own surroundings differently.
It really does.
Look at your own country right now. Look at the data your local politicians are confidently quoting on the news tonight.
The job reports flashing on the financial channels.
The celebrated startup booms in your city. In a modern world that is completely obsessed with data-driven decision-making, how many of our current laws, our local taxes, and our global policies are being written to fix a world that does not actually exist?
Are we making choices based on reality? Or are we just trapped in a statistical hallucination coded by bureaucrats who only see the paperwork?
Keep that in mind the next time someone tries to sell you an economic miracle based on raw data. Stay curious and always question the numbers.